Lost characters. They range from strange and obscure to even stranger and obscure. From Jasper from Family Guy to the forgotten Captain N, who used to represent Nintendo. And don't forget about Sherman from Peanuts. He had a terrible fate, one that I wouldn't even give to my worst enemies. And that's where I, Zeep, come in, your favorite sort of lost media content creator. This is gonna be super fun to get through. If you guys have any recommendations for any lost characters that I should cover, comment below. Make sure to get this to 3,000 likes if you want a sequel to this, and let's just get straight into it. Jasper from Family Guy. Okay guys, we've covered Vinny before on this channel, but I've received a couple requests to cover Jasper, Brian Griffin's long-lost cousin, who first appeared in Season 2, Episode 18 of the show.
What the? Hi! You guys have any cheese doodles? See, that's what I do. I ask for a snack and then I blow the horn.
In one of the best episodes of the series, E Peter bis Una. Yeah, the one where Peter establishes Pretoria, his own sovereign country, and goes to war with the US military. It's a classic.
Yes, what the United States is doing to Pretoria right now is criminal.
Nonsense! Force is the only thing a despot like Peter Griffin understands.
Jasper's first appearance is only made via cutaway. However, later on in the show, he becomes much more established. Something that I did think about as a kid, because in old episodes of Family Guy, Brian was seen as the only dog who could talk. As the show grew older, it was established that other animals would be able to talk as well, such as with the case of Vinny, who replaced Brian for a brief period after he died. Jasper was really the only other dog who could talk on the show who actually had multiple lines to him and actual character. This is what made him unique when it came to the early seasons of the show. When it came to an episode that Jasper actually had a significant role in, it was the episode Brian Does Hollywood in Season 3, in which Brian heads out to California to try and make it big and rooms with his cousin. This episode is crazy to me because it began with a previously on Family Guy bit, and when I was a kid, I thought this bit was just real, and I tried desperately to try and find this episode that said that all this stuff happened, when in reality it didn't.
Previously on Family Guy.
Guys, when I found out, I was pretty pissed. This episode is also interesting because when Jasper does appear, it's only for very brief scenes, and where Jasper just meets back with Brian at their apartment, and doesn't really say too much of anything besides, you know, be gay.
Do you like Sex in the City?
Yeah, it's an alright show.
I wasn't talking about the show. Ooh, I'm nasty.
Jasper's next appearance in Family Guy would be a very brief cameo in the background of a gay pride event, in the episode where Family Guy came back on the air after its cancellation. Look at him, he's right there in the corner. By far, Jasper's biggest appearance in the entire show, and where he's actually like a main critical part, is in the episode You May Now Kiss the, Guy Who Receives. That's literally the name of the episode. Season 4, Episode 25. Released on April 30th, 2006. Essentially, Jasper goes to Quahog to announce that he's getting married. Brian offers up the Griffin household as the location for the wedding, and one of the most famous bits in Family Guy history happens.
What's next? A workout followed by a romp around a crowded room while the music goes.
I only mention this because in elementary school, I remember everyone quoting this all the time. The episode can be seen as a bit of a political commentary of America at the time, as in the mid-2000s, gay marriage was looked down upon, with Lois taking the stance of being uncomfortable with the gay wedding happening at their house. Meanwhile, Mayor Adam West spends all the money from the government treasury on a Diggum statue, which receives backlash. And in order to distract everyone from the controversy, he bans gay marriage. Brian gets thousands of signatures to try and overturn Mayor West's ban, eventually presenting it to the mayor, to which Mayor West tosses it out the window, and a desperate Brian grabs the gun from a cop and takes the mayor hostage. Lois sees this, changes her mind, and goes down to the courthouse to tell Brian, hey, give yourself up. With the Mayor West kidnapping distracted everyone from the Diggum fiasco, Mayor West actually admires Brian and tears up the gay marriage ban, and voila, Jasper and Ricardo have their wedding after all. It's a fairly simple Family Guy story, but it's really Jasper's first major episode. Which is crazier because the next time Jasper would appear in Family Guy wouldn't be until season 11 of the show. This is in the year 2013. It had been 7 years since we had last seen Jasper. And it follows a plot we've seen before in Family Guy. Brian is trying to write a hit screenplay, and well, everyone says his writing sucks. Keep in mind, at this point, Family Guy has become much more jaded, so when it comes to advice that Jasper gives Brian, of course it's going to be jaded as well.
Okay, listen to me. Tell Stewie it's awful. It's garbage. Do whatever you have to do, Brian, but never let him know he's got talent.
And ladies and gentlemen, that marked the last time Jasper would have a speaking role in a Family Guy episode, as when it comes to all his appearances after that, he would not be saying anything. In Life of Brian, he shows up to Brian's funeral, crying. In the season 17 episode, No Giggity No Doubt, once again, Jasper just shows up in the background, not saying anything. As well in the season 19 episode, Customer of the Week, he shows up in the background when it comes to a joke having to do with Seth MacFarlane voicing all these characters. Yeah, Seth hasn't voiced Jasper in nearly 12 years. The question is, my dear viewer, does Jasper deserve to come back? And does any of this really matter? Kind of. Jasper is kind of interesting to me because he's a representation of old Family Guy. Jasper has a warm presence when he's presented into the show, which is kind of the vibe that the entirety of old Family Guy gives to me. There's like an authenticity in there, and you've heard it time and time again, but Family Guy back then had like some heart. Sure, the stories may have not have been crazy or whatever, and at times even boring. But I do think at that point, Seth MacFarlane truly cared about his characters, and I think Jasper is no different from that care. Should Jasper come back in an episode centered around him? I mean, sure, but from that brief interaction we saw between him and Brian in one of the newer Family Guy episodes from 2013, I don't know if they would be able to write him as he was back in the day. I see this implying that Family Guy characters have become much more jaded. I think we could all agree on that. The soul of the original animation has now been replaced with characters who are cynical, a family that's ready to tear each other apart. Maybe this is the case where Jasper should stay in the world of old Family Guy, as in that way, that era of old authenticity could still stay intact. Captain N. In the late 1980s, Nintendo was on top of the world. After saving the video game industry with the Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo of America wanted a character that could encapsulate all things Nintendo. Sure, they had Mario, they had Link, and so many other big hits, but they needed one original character that was the embodiment of all things Nintendo. Enter the world of Captain N, the Game Master. From 1989 to 1991, this Saturday morning cartoon was meant to sort of like this product placement to advertise Nintendo games, all under the guise of this teenage boy named Kevin Keene, the protagonist of the series.
Simon Belmont? Kid Icarus? Mega Man?
He enters into Videoland through an ultimate warp zone, and where the main enemy is Mother Brain from Neptroid. Created by Deke Entertainment, which has quite possibly the greatest intro and logo of all time. The show was okay. You see, I wasn't around in 1989, I was around like 10 years away from being born, so all I could really gather from watching a couple episodes of this show is a lot of product placement, which, I mean, I don't really know what I expected. That was basically a certainty when I saw Captain N holding a Nintendo Zapper gun. Yeah, for those who aren't in the know, the Zapper gun was used for the video game Duck Hunt, released on the NES, and it worked okay. Nintendo was around like 16, 17 years away from releasing the Nintendo Wii, so I guess this was kinda cool. Especially if it's like 1985, you probably have never done something like this before. Aiming a plastic gun to your TV. That was probably revolutionary. Something about Captain N's design is that he does have a jacket on, but it's not what you think. The N is supposed to represent Northridge High School, the high school in where Captain N goes to, but it also represents Nintendo, which is pretty cool. You wanna know a fun fact I learned? The original NBC broadcast version of episode 2 of the show contained a lot of mistakes, including unfinished animation, and if you see it side by side, oh my god. What makes it even funnier is that when it came to release Captain N on DVD, for some reason the unfinished version of the episode was the one they selected to put on the DVD set. Meaning that the only way to watch the second episode of the show completely finished in its animation is if you find re-uploaded low-quality versions of the episode that were taped over back in 1989. So here's something crazy. The word Nintendo is never used once in the entire show. This is because of one reason: Congress. In the late 80s and early 1990s, parents were growing increasingly upset over Saturday morning cartoons, as most Saturday morning cartoons had an objective: to sell toys. Enough parents complained to their state legislatures that by the turn of the decade, Congress was ready to go after shows that were blatantly trying to advertise toys to their kids. In the eyes of parents and lawmakers, if it wasn't an educational show, then it was a detriment to the children watching it. Hence the name Captain N. If Nintendo wasn't in the title, then their boy Captain N wouldn't be a prime target to be removed off the air. Never fear, there was a Captain Nintendo, as in the old Nintendo Power Hour magazines, wasn't a teenager from California, but actually a Nintendo employee who would bring Nintendo characters to life. Captain N was cancelled after 2 seasons, which makes it even more weirder when I tell you there's technically a Season 3. Season 3 of Captain N is essentially an entirely different show. The animations in Season 3 are notably way less quality, with multiple characters being redesigned, and also the episodes being half the length than they were in its first 2-season run. This was because the show would be aired alongside the Super Mario World TV show. This is only notable to me, as to promote the show, Mario, Captain N are all right next to Yogi Bear in a promotional magazine trying to promote this block of the show. That's right, Mario met Yogi Bear and the Care Bears. That's insane to me. I would say Captain N is an extreme product of his time, a caricature of what the late 1980s and early 1990s was. I didn't grow up with Captain N. My version of Nintendo was way different than the mammoth of what Nintendo was in the 80s. To continue that domination, they had to promote Nintendo via TV shows. I mean, there was no internet at the time, so I understand why he was created. Captain N may not be the coolest character to have ever lived, but to the children of the late 80s and early 90s, at some point, he meant something to them. Shermy. Guys, Shermy deserved better. First appearing in the Peanuts comic strip on October 2nd, 1950, he was seen sitting down on a curb next to Patty, speaking the lines of dialogue, "Good old Charlie Brown, how I hate him." Which, before I get any further, he becomes one of Charlie Brown's best friends, at least throughout the 1950s and 1960s comic strips of Peanuts. At first, Shermy was like the better and more athletic version of Charlie Brown, almost as if he was Charlie Brown's rival. Which is kind of funny because, well, I mean, it's Charlie Brown. Eventually, though, Charlie and Shermy became very good friends. Sherman would appear often in the comic strip. However, oftentimes, though, he wouldn't really be saying too much. He would just be agreeing with Charlie, or serve to prove a point. I mean, if you want to talk about the most famous thing he ever did, he was the shepherd in the Charlie Brown Christmas special.
I always end up playing a shepherd.
Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Sherman would barely show up in the Peanuts comics, mostly because other characters were taking his place. Lucy and Linus were fairly popular when it came to Peanuts, with comic readers saying, hey, we want more of these characters. To which the creator of Peanuts was like, okay, sure. If you want to talk about noteworthy comic strips displaying the importance of Shermy, I could only list you one example really, and it's a sad example. A long time ago, it was implied that Patty and Shermy were actually in a relationship. However, it was a fairly one-sided relationship, with Patty only really liking Shermy for his comic books. Look at this. Don't you love me anymore, Patty? How's your comic book collection coming? I bought 4 more yesterday. I love you madly. You want to hear something even crazier? Shermy's last actual appearance in the Peanuts comic strip was on June 15th, 1969. The creator of Peanuts, Scholes, was quote saying he had no regret of dropping Shermy, saying that Shermy's entire point as a character was only for him to be used whenever a character with very little personality was needed. For at least 2.5 decades, Shermy's appearances would basically be nada, nothing. To die-hard Peanut fans, he would be a joke, abandoned by his own creator for better and more interesting characters. It was over. Not only that, but the creator of him also basically said he hated how he looked, hating his entire hair. Which, to be fair, is like a bunch of squiggly lines and kind of looks like ass, but, you know, it's still kind of mean. In a comic strip with a lot of main characters who have specials that have focused entirely on them, he's one of the only ones to have never had a special on him. Just when it seemed like it was all but over but Shermy, the GOAT came back.
Can you believe it? On a field like this, Sally found something beautiful to care about.
In 2008 and 2011, 2 Peanut specials came out, and where Shermy appeared. And in 2015, when the Peanuts movie dropped onto the public airwaves, Shermy was there in his full glory in a Peanuts motion picture. People say that the tragedy here is that Shermy isn't a main character anymore. That his appearances, whenever he does appear, are very brief and don't really have much substance to them. Which, to be fair, Shermy didn't really have much substance to begin with. I think if Shermy started to have character now, it wouldn't be the same Shermy that we all know and I guess we love. Shermy is just Shermy, and I like it that way. He is the greatest to ever do it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and here's to a great 2025.